Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. About 10 years ago, I wrote an editorial for ClassicsToday.com called Seven Phases in the Life of a Hardcore Record Collector. And I went back and I looked at it, and a lot has changed in the past 10 years, and some of it was still pretty pertinent. Some of it needed a little tweaking and updating. So I thought, since I have this marvelous new forum, and since the number of people who actually are going to hunt around on the internet for a 10-year-old editorial, even on ClassicsToday.com, a site with trillions of avid readers, it's not going to be that many. Who am I kidding? So I thought I would try out the new and spruced up version here in this forum. And of course, I'm going to have to read it, which I don't normally do, but consider it as a form of performance art, or like hip hop or rap music, where you have kind of poetry set to a rhythm. Actually, I have a rhythm here, but I'm not going to use it because it'll make everybody crazy. And here we go. You ready? It's 7 phases in the life of a hardcore record collector. Now, I'm sure some of you have seen a famous little poster called The 6 Phases of a Project. In case this escaped your attention, those phases are, and I love this, enthusiasm, disillusionment, panic, search for the guilty, punishment of the innocent, praise and honors for the non-participants. Well, it occurred to me that the life of a typical hardcore classical music record collector might be similarly categorized. Is there any such thing as a typical hardcore classical music record collector? I don't know. Let's find out. So I propose the following, and you can write back to me and tell me where you fall on this continuum. 7 phases, and here they are. Phase 1, discovery. This is the most wonderful time of all, when the world seems full of almost a limitless number of masterpieces crying for your attention. The only constraint on your enthusiasm is your wallet, and you do whatever you can to purchase as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because it's all so exciting. That's phase 1. We're just getting started. Phase 2, after discovery, comes expansion. You all know this phase, don't you? You notice that the same music sounds different in different performances. And so you begin collecting multiple versions of your favorite works and start to get a sense for which artists offer interpretations that are most to your liking. You smile knowingly when friends and family members ask the perfectly logical question, why do you need 15 different recordings of Mahler's Second Symphony? Ha! Aren't they foolish, you think to yourself. Phase 3, Fandom, also known as Dementia. Your taste in various performers leads you to fixate on one or two or more who you believe hold the key to indisputable artistic greatness. You become a fan. Now, instead of purchasing multiple recordings of the same music, you're after multiple recordings of the same music by the same artist at different periods, sometimes only a few days apart. You begin looking for pirate air checks, private recordings, every scrap you can get your hands on, no matter if it sounds awful and your idol might have had a really bad day. You must have it. You must have it anyway. And you start to find great significance in relatively tiny interpretive differences from one performance to the next. That's why it's also called Dementia. Then we come to phase 4, nostalgia. This is a transitional phase. Now comes that terrifying moment when you feel that you've heard it all. You've mastered the basic repertoire and know all the great performers, those you like and those you don't, and you've reached the dreaded great works saturation point. What's missing in your life is the thrill of discovery, that first flush of enthusiasm for each masterpiece as it sounded when you first encountered it. What are you going to do? You're absolutely on the verge of despair. And so you move on to phase 5, the Crusade. You could also call this the quest. But one way or another, it's a crusade or a quest or a journey. Happily for you, salvation is at hand in the form of dozens of fine independent labels specializing in all sorts of repertoire niches just waiting to be explored. Now, there are 2 principal dangers with this phase, not including possible bankruptcy, of course, which is always an ever-present danger in any one of these phases. The first danger is the inevitable and chronic lack of shelf space, a difficulty avoided as you make your first trips to that musical safety valve, the second-hand CD shop. Or better still, subscribe to a streaming service or purchase digital downloads, avoiding physical product altogether. You see, that wasn't an option 10 years ago. Now it is. So danger number 1 on the Crusade is somewhat mitigated. But the second danger is the tendency, similar to what happens in the Dementia phase 3, to make exaggerated claims for music that really isn't all that special or interesting just because its novelty excites your fancy. And this is a real problem. People will look at you strangely as you vigorously try to defend the assertion that Havergal Brian was England's greatest composer, Sarabji a genius, or that Beethoven was a musical pygmy compared to Ferdinand Ries. This phase can go on for years. Some people never get over it. Some people go completely bonkers. And there are literally thousands of performances passing through a typical collector's hands in an endless crusade for that holy grail of classical music, the neglected masterpiece. If you seriously believe that the 3 Bs means Bax, Bruckner, and W.F. Bach rather than J.S., then you've gone too far. You need help. You really need help. And it's time to move on to phase 6. So, what is phase 6? Renewal. Phase 6 is renewal. I hope that you get past phase 5 and can move on to phase 6. One day, as you look through the letter B in your carefully alphabetized collection, which we just talked about a few chats ago, you see those 40 or 50 Beethoven cycles that you haven't touched in months or even years. Playing the symphonies just for old time's sake, you are stunned to realize that they truly are light years better than the second-rate crap that have constituted your main musical diet lately. So you move on to Brahms, Mozart, Handel, Mahler, Haydn, Bach, even, gasp, Tchaikovsky and Richard Strauss. It's as if you're hearing them for the first time, and how alive, how refreshing they all sound. You fall in love with the great classics all over again, and you realize that the judgment of history isn't always wrong. Very, very important point. And if you're really lucky, if you make it through phase 6, you can move on to phase 7. Now, I have to confess, phase 7 is something which at this point is merely theoretical. I'm not there yet. I may never get there. None of us may ever get there. I actually met somebody who seemed to be moving on to phase 7, but then I realized that they were just going into assisted living and couldn't bring their collection with them. It was very sad. So, phase 7, maturity. Yes, I call it maturity. And I really never want to leave adolescence. But yes, there will be a maturity. If you're lucky, you may get this far. You realize that it's not necessary to own 50 Beethoven cycles, 46 of which you never play, when you can be just as happy with 20 of them, 16 of which you never play. The complete harmonium music of Siegfried Karg Ellert, the Bulgarian Mahler cycle, 20 or 30 Gregorian chant collections, 6 copies of the same historical recording reissued on 6 different labels in marginally varying but always terrible sound quality. Your cherished 12-CD box containing pirate recordings of Sviatoslav Richter's legendary Spandau prison concerts, and literally dozens of Baroque operas about which you remember nothing beyond the fact that they all sound exactly the same. All of these go straight to the Hughes CD store or in your delete bin. Just like lost umbrellas, they'll be returned to circulation to nourish the next generation of classical CD collectors who are on the crusade. And as for you, well, you still purchase new releases discreetly, carefully, selectively, and you take as much time as it requires to enjoy every single one of them individually for itself. And that, my friends, is the 7 phases. Those are the 7 phases of a hardcore classical CD collector. Let's just run them name by name, name them one more time just for fun. Discovery, expansion, fandom or dementia, nostalgia, the crusade, and renewal, and then finally, maturity. I think there's a certain validity in this particular paradigm that I've enumerated, and I'm awfully curious to find out where you are in it. I'm in phase 6. I'm never getting to maturity. But renewal has happened because I went for a very, very long time ignoring all of these standard classics in the search for every single obscure masterpiece in the universe and hearing all kinds of crazy claims made for really second-rate composers. Some of them who wrote some very good works. Yes, there were some. But, at the end of the day, there's a reason that Haydn and Beethoven and Mozart and Bach and Handel and Dvorak and Brahms and, why they're considered so great. It's because they are great. And we're not worse off for having to limit that concept of greatness to just the few certifiable masters. I wonder if that's true too. That's probably the subject for another talk. Why is something great? Why is something not? In fact, one of you even suggested something like that, and I may do it. In the meantime, enjoy, my friends, my fellow hardcore collectors. Let me turn this little thing off. There we go. And do keep on listening. No matter what, one thing all of these phases have in common. You keep on listening. So thank you for joining me, friends. Take care. Bye-bye.